All right, welcome back, everybody. Let's go into a quick overview of what we've done thus far, and specifically just what we did right before we took our break. So right before we took our break, we decided to mock Axios or integrate Axios into the mix, knowing that we're going to make API calls. So here we imported Axios, and on line 17, we actually go and mock Axios. So let's make a comment. And actually, this is going to help me make additional notes. So ls get branch and get branch. Additional notes and good checkout. Okay, so now we're on branch additional notes, and I know that because I can check the branches. Okay, perfect. So here I'm going to go ahead and mock Axios library to ensure I'm not sending API calls. Here I'm describing what the function will be called. And then I actually start going into creating my assertion. So notice how I made this asynchronous, right? And then here, I'm going to establish the return from a GET request. So because I'm not actually making an Axios call when this test is run, I'm telling it, hey, if Axios runs a GET request, this is the default value that I wanted to return upon the request being sent. So then lastly, I actually send that request and I assign the return value to Pokemon list. And then I run my expect block, which in this case, I just wanted to return an array of objects. So I place an array of objects here to ensure that that's what it's actually returning. So that was us creating our test. And then when we went over to the home page, we actually created a function. Right, so we create the function normally, turn it into an asynchronous function. We have response, which is awaiting for a response in the promise. And then we return response.data, which as we see here, we have a data. And then we want results, because in results is where the array of objects is located. And we got this information from the Poke API. All right. So we created this function, watched our function pass. Once our function passed our test, we then moved into implementing the function in our program. So here we have a use effect that will happen upon the page rendering. And once the page renders, it creates this asynchronous function inside of the use effect, which then makes a call to the get 30 Pokemon. And then we set my Pokemon to that return. And we see that here. So now if I, oh, hello. Oh. If I run the server and I refresh this, ooh, oh, this is in home. There you go. And I refresh this. We see that there's a list, which is what it was initialized as on line 10. And then once we run this get Pokemon function, we set it to the result from our get 30 Pokemon. And now we have an array of 30 objects with a Pokemon name and their corresponding URL. And then we're able to see that because we have a use effect here that will console log my Pokemon every time there's a change in my Pokemon. So just to demonstrate that, if I were to take off the dependency and refresh this, I would never see the result. It would just tell me that I have an empty array because only console logging what my Pokemon was initialized as. But if I tell it that if my Pokemon changes to rerun this function or this body of the use effect, then once the response comes back, it knows that my Pokemon changed. So it then triggers the console log so that I can see the result of my Pokemon. And I can actually see it. Okay, so that's great. So now let's say that I wanted to do something like my Pokemon map, and let's say Pokemon. And I wanted to return a p tag of Pokemon name. And let's see. Okay, so we're getting this warning saying, hey, there's supposed to be a key and you're not giving me a key. So let's give it an IDX. And let's pass that as the key here. Okay, there you go. So now we have no warnings, no errors, and we just see that list of 30 Pokemon showing up. All right. So now notice that now if I run my task suite, there's going to be one test that's going to fail. And that one test that fails is my snapshot. Because now my snapshot, it's expecting that lorem test text, but obviously that's not the case anymore. But if I want to keep these changes, and let me just close this so that we don't see that red. But if I want to just change this so that it's correct, I can update it. So now it's updated. Everything's working well. The console logs are still happening regardless. And now let's say, because I know this is still working, although I made a change to my program, I don't have to go around and try to check if everything's working because all my tests are telling me everything's still working, right? I can run npm test again, just to ensure. Okay, so it recognized 5 testing files and all 11 tests passed. It's awesome. So my program's functioning correctly the way I want it to work. And I can go and check, okay, everything's working, change it to true, go to complete a task. It should be now in true. Okay. So it's working well, the way that I want it to work. And now that I made that new development, I can now bring it back into main. So now let's go back into main, get branch main. Sorry, get checkout main. That is not what I meant to do. I'm so sorry. I could spell, I promise. Additional notes. Okay. So now I have this. I can run my get status so that I can see what's changed. It tells me what changed. So it updated the snapshots. And then it has homepage that changed. And it has my unit test for homepage that changed. Okay, awesome. So now I can actually push this. So git add all, git commit -m, and I can say prep to merge. Okay, so now I can check out my main branch. And notice that my main branch goes back to having that lorem stuff, because that's what the last commit on my main branch did, right? And if I run npm test here, all of my testings, oh, hello. Oh no, let me make sure I didn't just, okay, perfect. So now if I go into my task manager and I run npm test, all of my tests are still going to pass because it still has all of the old information. So this is all great. And now let's say I wanted to merge. So now I could merge additional notes. Okay, so now I merged additional nodes. Everything was completed. Doesn't seem to have any merge conflicts. We see that everything was updated. And just to ensure that everything was updated, I can always run npm test. Still has all 5 test suites. Everything was updated correctly. And now if I run the dev, well, the dev is still holding all of my information and everything's working the way I want it to. And I didn't have to necessarily go in here and test it out myself because my test is making sure that everything's working correctly the way I want it to. And that's one of the biggest pictures, overall pictures of testing. It just helps with being able to merge, having development branches, and ensuring that creating a new feature won't break your application. So now that that's done, I can again ask which branch I'm on. I'm in main. So now I can say get add or get status. It's going to tell me that everything's clean. Commit -m. Oh, merged with additional. And once that's done, oh, it's telling me there's nothing to commit, there's nothing to add, but I can push into origin main to ensure that the new changes are updated on GitHub. All right, so now if I were to go on to GitHub, you guys would see this brand new updated things. Yeah, definitely makes sense for a big project. And it really helps keeps things organized. And it's, I know it's hard to believe, especially after seeing the lesson, but it saves a lot of time in the development process. Because then you don't have to go around, try to figure out if everything's working, especially once you have a backend integrated into this. Rather, your test will pick up that slack for you as long as your test passed, your functionality passed, which means your application is good to go. Okay, and that is our testing lecture for the day. Is there any questions? Awesome. Did everyone understand that GitHub stuff? What is Vitest? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Thanks everyone for showing up today and being here and participating throughout the process. Currently it's 11:43. So let's just take it until 1 o'clock for lunch and let's come back. And the assignment for today is just take that project that we worked on yesterday, which was the video store, and start adding some of these tests into them. All right, test out each individual component, figure out what memory router looks like with each individual component and how you can actually pass a context provider to each one of those components. Because it's all fine and dandy when you see it, but as we all know, once you start implementing it, things always go south. Awesome. I'll see everyone later today. Yes, there will be behavioral questions today. And let me actually check the calendar. Let me stop recording.